Shut up and sit down.
It's the Maryland Sports Blog Weekly Recap Show, hosted by Adcock.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the MSB Weekly Recap Show. I'm your host, Adam Gockin, and today I'm joined alongside four more of our Maryland Sports Blog writers. Today we're talking Washington football team, Ravens, Orioles, Nationals, and Capitals, and a little bit of DC United at the very end. So today, to start off, we're going to talk about the O's and bring in Sean Morter. Sean, what's been going on with the Orioles this last week?
Well, they finally ended their 6-game losing streak, thankfully. And then in that same game that they lost, or they won, they brought out Ryan Mountcastle finally. And they've just been on a winning streak, or a 2-game winning streak since that time. So it's been going pretty good, ups and downs, but we'll take it.
Yeah, it's an Orioles team. 14-14 is where they're at right now, and that's even better than we were all expecting. And we're heading up towards the midway point of the season. They've played 28 games. It's a 60-game long season, and they are in the hunt. So this Orioles team has really got a chance to do something special. Anyone else have anything else to say about the O's before we move on?
Yeah. So the Orioles, it was a kind of a rough week. Hanser Alberto, he struggled. He was left off the out of the lineup for a couple games to kind of get his head straight. Ruiz also struggled, but he had a big day today with 4 RBIs. And Mountcastle was actually recalled on Friday. They lost their first game, but they did win Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was an extra innings. Severino had the walk-off single. Other notes, Cedric Mullins has played really well this week. He took the leadoff spot today, and which was generally Alberto or Austin Hayes. Hayes is on the DL with the fractured ribs. Wade LeBlanc went down, and after getting 2 outs in the first, it does not sound good. It was elbow discomfort, which for a pitcher is never good. Severino also left the game early today. It seemed like he had a little hamstring, or he pulled up on his thighs. It was like a hip flexor. So that seems like a more short term. They've been DHing Pedro Severino a lot, and kind of having a true platoon with 3 catchers with Chance Cisco. Either he's been DHing or Severino's catching, or even Brian Holiday has gotten a decent amount of playing time for a third catcher you think is never going to see the field. But he has actually played a decent amount. Other notes with Ryan Mountcastle, he had his first 2 doubles today, first 2 extra base hits. His first hit came on Saturday. He walked twice on Friday, which was his debut. So it was a really good debut. They have him playing left field, which is a new position for him, which was one of the reasons why they held him back a little bit. If anybody is familiar with Ryan Mountcastle and his situation, he was brought up as a shortstop, moved to third base. They didn't think his arm was going to be good enough to play third base at the major league level. And so they're putting him in the outfield. He's kind of a guy that he's hit at every level, and it's just absolutely raked. But his defense has always been kind of a question mark. So that's something he's going to continue to work on. He looked good. He wasn't really tested in the outfield, but he did look good. Other notes, trying to think. The Orioles are at 500 right now. So you can't really be too upset. It was a tough week. They got swept by Toronto, lost the series against the Nationals, and tied the series with the Red Sox, who are in last place and look like one of the worst teams. But it was an eventful week. A lot of hope for the Orioles fans seeing one of their top prospects finally recalled.
And now after that, we're going to stay in Baltimore and bring it right back to Brian. So, Brian, Ravens, first week in pads. What's gone on so far?
It was really an eventful week. The Ravens released Earl Thomas today, safety. He was really a future Hall of Famer, but most of his time was, as everyone knows, with Seattle. He did make the Pro Bowl last year and was a top 100 player for the NFL top 100 this year. He had a little bit of trouble in the offseason, but it wasn't. He was more of the victim in this circumstance with his wife threatening him, and that kind of made turned some of the Ravens' eyes. He did not have a great season last year. He had 2 interceptions, but most notably in the playoffs, that big stiff arm by Derrick Henry. Earl Thomas is a freelancer. I would say a less smarter Ed Reed, less faster Ed Reed. Kind of that ball hawking free safety that is out to be a playmaker. Turnovers. He caused 3 turnovers last year, which for a guy who's supposed to be doing that is not that great. So he got in a fight with Chuck Clark, who I think is one of the smartest defensive players in the league. He turned the Ravens around last year. When Tony Jefferson went down with an injury, they plugged Chuck Clark in and almost immediately gave him the signal caller duties, which is historically what your middle linebacker is going to do. But with the absence of C.J. Mosley, who left in free agency prior to last year, Tony Jefferson was calling the plays, and they handed it over to Chuck Clark, and there was just an immediate improvement to the defense. Players were always accounted for. There weren't as many wide open passing plays in which, if anybody recalls watching the Ravens-Cardinals game, you saw even Larry Fitzgerald just going wide open, uncovered. All that got cleaned up because Chuck Clark was calling the plays, calling the audibles. He did an incredible job. This is a late-round pick that really developed into being a starting safety, and the Ravens rewarded him immediately. So Earl Thomas in practice, he goes and freelances again and blows a coverage and gets in a fight and punches Chuck Clark. The Ravens just invested in was pretty much said, that's our guy, right? And developed and everything. And they've had it with him. Earl Thomas has been noted to be late to practice, and he stayed home on Saturday after getting sent home on Friday. And they decided that they were going to cut him for actions detrimental to the team. So the Ravens will get part of their dead money back and some of that salary back. And part of that also includes whoever signs Earl Thomas, it's like a 40% is taken off what the Ravens owe him. So it's been eventful. Lamar Jackson also missed a couple of games with a soft tissue injury. Probably something minor. He's expected to be back tomorrow. The Ravens practiced at their home stadium today. So it's been an eventful week. Earl Thomas is gone. Several teams are probably really excited about that, but he had a subpar year. He's in his 30s. He's not what he once was. It's not going to be as big as some people think.
Yeah, so I think that's all we have for the Ravens, and you could say that's eventful, but next we're going to talk about probably the most eventful team that we have here. The Washington Capitals, of course, this past week lost Game 5, and then to many fans' delight, they fired Todd Reardon. Now, Austen, I think we all saw this coming. What's next for the Caps?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question there, Adam, and it really does begin with the front office. General Manager Brian McClellan came out today. He had his end-of-year presser, and the first thing that he noted was that the effort just wasn't there in the organization. In fact, I think one of the most telling things that he said, and one of the things that really stuck out to me, was that he noted that the culture that they had built that won them the Cup in 2018 was slipping away. what does that look like? What's next? They're going to go and get an experienced coach. It sounds like McClellan and Ted Leonsis, the owner of the Washington Capitals and the Wizards, they've kind of come to this agreement that there needs to be an experienced coach, and experienced coaches tend to get paid more. If you recall back in 2018, after the Caps won the Cup, Barry Trotz was up for an extension. He was in the final year of his contract. When they originally signed the contract, there was a 2-year extension with, I believe, a $1 million raise, which would have brought him to about $2.5 million. Barry Trotz didn't like that. He wanted 5 years at $5 million. The money wasn't really the sticking point as much as the term was, given the fact that they had flirted several times with firing Barry Trotz. So they couldn't come to an agreement, and he resigned from his position as the head coach. And they went with Reardon, who they believed was ready after being groomed for several years to be the next head coach of the Washington Capitals. There are several guys out on the market that are experienced. Most notably, in my opinion, you've got Gerard Gallant, former head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights, led them to the Stanley Cup in their inaugural season back in 2018. They ended up playing the Capitals and losing. And then he took them back to the playoffs the next year. And that was when the Game 7 major penalty meltdown happened. They were up by they were up by 3 with 7 to go. Took a major penalty, which wasn't a major penalty, and then blew the lead and lost in overtime. He's got a strong system. He's a real tough guy. But he takes a team that comes out of an expansion draft, leads them to a Pacific title in his first year, and they run roughshod through the Western Conference. I mean, they beat the Kings, the San Jose Sharks, and the Winnipeg Jets back to back in the playoffs. And I mean, pretty impressive given the amount of talent on that team. Not high-end elite talent, but more so they called themselves the team of misfits. So he knows how to get talent out of his players. The other names that have been kind of circling around, Peter Laviolette, former head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers and the Nashville Predators, won a cup in Carolina back in 2003. I think the Capitals are going to be a little bit hesitant to bring in a guy like him. He's notably a very defensive coach, kind of sucks the offense and the creativity out of his team just by how he creates his structure. Nashville, before they brought in Laviolette, was top 10 in goals, and then after they brought him in, they dropped in middle of the pack, like 18, 17 for a couple of seasons before they fired him. Another name that we've heard, Mike Babcock. Formerly considered probably the greatest coach in hockey, moves over from Detroit to Toronto after winning a cup in Anaheim. Doesn't do very well in Toronto, despite having arguably the best forward core in all of hockey besides the Tampa Bay Lightning. Don't get past the first round, lose to the Bruins 3 years in a row. Apparently he had a real issue getting on top of players, and players really didn't like him all that much. They fired him. And they brought in their assistant coach to man the helm for the rest of the year. I don't think the Capitals are going to look towards Mike Babcock. He's got a big price tag. He has not won a playoff series in over 6 years. I just don't think he's the right fit. And then the last name that swirled around, and it's actually kind of an interesting pick here, and I'm not saying I would be against it, but I'm also not for it, is former head coach of the Washington Capitals, Bruce Boudreau. He was released from Minnesota earlier this year. They wanted to do a new organizational move, go in a different direction, despite the fact they were in a playoff position. He's got a ton of experience in Washington. Obviously, he kind of helmed the young gun era back when it was Ovechkin, Backstrom, Semin, and Mike Green. Had a little bit of playoff success over in Anaheim to 2 Western Conference Finals, lost in 7 games both times. But I don't think the Capitals are going to kind of use that retread there. It seems to me that they're going to go with a brand new, fresh voice. That's to be determined. I mean, it's going to be a huge hire for Brian McClellan. He got backed into a corner in 2018 when Trotz kind of balked at the money and the price. So he had to turn to Reardon. Obviously, it didn't work out, and that's fine. But he built a team that's ready to win a cup now. There are going to be some obvious changes on the roster. We're going to see a few defensemen and a few forwards probably go. I mean, Michael Kempny, I don't think he's going to be a Capital anymore. Radko Gudas won't be a Capital. There's definitely a question about Carl Hagelin and Richard Panik's future. We didn't see the kind of play that we would expect out of Yevgeny Kuznetsov. That's definitely another question mark there, where is he worth keeping around? Braden Holtby's future is another big one. So there's a lot to unpack there. It's definitely disappointing. I know that the bubble kind of created this weird atmosphere, but the Capitals, they can't tolerate another first-round defeat. I mean, the guy they bring in has to be prepared to win now.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. I think the most important thing is that they get a coach who's experienced. We saw what happened when they brought in Dale Hunter and Adam Oates. Bad, not good teams. They bring in Barry Trotz, and they win the cup. And then they go back to Reed, an unexperienced coach. And what happens? 2 straight first-round exits. And I think they really need to go back to that experience. And they still have the talent to win a cup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, I don't want to dig too much on Reardon, because he did help us bring, he was the defensive assistant when we won the cup. So everything that Todd Reardon did during his tenure with the Capitals, a lot of it should be applauded. He's a remarkably good guy. He's liked by the team. He's a staple in the Washington community. He does a lot for the community. So this isn't, I'm not trying to bash the guy. It didn't work out though. They just have to get going. I mean, Ovechkin's window closes in 2 to 3 years. So I think that the Capitals are going to look to reload. I wouldn't be shocked if the Caps start swinging some deals and kind of take flyers on younger guys who've got a little bit of, a little bit of pep in their step, and they can kind of inject a little speed. But we just need to bring in a guy. The Caps need to bring in a guy who's got more structure and a bit more fluid. So,
if I may jump in, Austen, everything you pointed out was absolutely correct. I mean, the Caps are a veteran team that their window is closing. You have Oshie, Backstrom, Ovi. Like these guys are all, minus Backstrom getting hurt, and Wilson are all guys that showed up, when it came to playoffs. I mean, no one showed up more than Oshie and Ovi when it came to playoffs. I mean, Kuzi played all right, had some really big key goals too, but he's a guy who needs to be coached. Same with guys like Vrana and, even Orlov. Like these guys need a strong coach, not a rookie coach to, point them in the right direction. And I mean, he's 100% right. The Caps window is closing. They have a lot of veteran guys in the early to mid 30s. They're one of the oldest teams. They've made some mediocre to bad deals to lose some of their speed, like with Stevenson, and went and got older instead, which ended up is probably going to bite them. I mean, Stevenson went on and had a really good year with the Vegas Knights after he got traded.
Look at Burakovsky. I think that's a real testament to how poorly Reardon handled talented players on the team.
Yeah, and I mean, we all knew Berkey was talented, right? Like we saw him in Game 7 get 2 goals against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Never cracked 38 points in Washington. In 54 games in Colorado, he had 45 points, over 20 goals. So, and you nailed it again. I mean, it's just the Capitals are an older team. They need some established. There's going to be some movement. I think it's going to be super interesting. You bring it up. I mean, Washington had 3 guys show up, and I would argue Holtby definitely did his best, and 4 guys showed up. I mean, we had 8 goals in the playoffs, and they were scored by 3 guys. Ovechkin and Oshie had 4, and Ovechkin had 4, and Oshie and Kuznetsov had 2, and that's just, for a team that is as loaded as the Capitals are, that's just absolutely pitiful.
And the one player I think really kind of blew it. I don't know if he was hurt. We did know he was nursing some injuries. Was John Carlson, and historically, John Carlson has kind of been hard to work with. I mean, he's been going through defensive pairings like none other since Carl Alsner. I mean, he cost the Capitals that overtime game. I don't know if that's a coaching thing or if he was just playing hurt, but he was trying to poke at the puck when all he needed to do was hit the body. I don't know if he thought it was a 2-on-1 situation or what was going through his head at that point, but He did not
You could
have a good
definitely tell he
playoffs.
was injured. You could definitely he took that leg injury against Carolina in the exhibition game. But yeah, you're right. He definitely looked off the entire series. I think he actually performed halfway decently. I mean, he had 4 assists in 4 games or in 5 games. So he was definitely contributing from back there, but defensively, they do have to find a guy. And I think Dillon can be the guy. I mean, Dillon's contract is up. That's going to be one of the big questions is does Brendan Dillon resign? I mean, he took Lord knows how many penalties in like 12 games with Washington.
Not smart penalties in the
Yeah.
playoffs at all. But I do like Dillon too.
I like the way he plays. I think he's smart with the puck most of the time. And I think he's a really good compliment to Carlson. I would like to see, I mean, at the right price, because, I mean, Washington right now has 4 guaranteed guys. I think with Kempny gone, I mean, Jensen was the best defenseman in the playoffs for the Caps. I think you got to keep him. He looks like he's really filled in. Carlson, Orlov, and Dillon can be a really solid top 4. And then you bring in Siegenthaler, Favari, and Alex Alexiev down from Hershey, and you just let them compete and see who wins 5 and 6.
So I know a little bit extended topic, but going into next season, who do you think are absolute locks for the Caps? You know, with all the changes, who do you think are the absolute keepers?
Well, I mean, I think Ovechkin's obvious. I mean, if you look, the top 6 is definitely guaranteed. Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Tom Wilson, TJ Oshie, Jacob Vrana. I think he's going into a contract year. This is going to be a huge year for Jacob Vrana. The guy he's progressed so well in the regular season. You're like, this is it. He's finally going to break out, and then he doesn't. He's in the final year of what is, I think, a $4.5 million deal. So he's either going to command a ton of money, or the Capitals might move on from him in the same way they moved on from Burakovsky. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think we're going to see a coach who really gets the best out of Jacob Vrana. Lars Eller's definitely going to stay. Personally, I like Carl Hagelin. I think he brings a lot of rough, and he's fast and he is great on the puck when it comes to defense, and he really solidified our PK this year. Richard Panik is a question mark. I think Nick Dowd is a question mark. Garnet Hathaway, I like the snarl. He has almost no offensive ability. That's okay out of 4th liners. You just need guys who don't bleed goals. The 4th line left wing, Kovalchuk, I think, is gone. I don't think Kovalchuk comes back. He was nearly invisible. He had 1 goal and 2 assists in 12 games with Caps. And defensively, I think Kempny's gone. The 4 that we noted, I think they'll re-sign Dillon if they can, especially if they get Kempny's contract off the books. I'm a little bit afraid for Nick Jensen. I think that they might try and move him just because he hasn't been like what they thought they were getting. But I thought his game, the last 12 games before the pause, and then the 8 games afterward, I thought that he played just fantastic. I thought he was one of, if not the best Caps defenseman. And then obviously Braden Holtby's future is still a huge question mark. I think it's going to come down to whether or not Samsonov passes his 8-week physical. He, if you follow Caps hockey, you know that he was in Russia over the break. He was screwing around on an ATV. He lost control of it, and he flipped off of it, and he landed on his back and hurt his neck and his back. So he was physically unable to perform for the bubble. It's going to be a huge question mark to see whether or not they can. He's back at full health. I mean, if he starts failing those tests, the Capitals really need to start looking at who they're going to move to fit Braden Holtby back in under the cap. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Samsonov will be all right.
Yeah, and I think that's all we have here for the Caps as, season over, but it should be a pretty eventful, exciting offseason for them. So now we'll move back into the in-season sports and talk some Nationals with Noah.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So again, with the Nationals, it was another week of pretty much 500 baseball, and getting to the quarter mark of the season, actually just over the quarter mark. The Nats, they definitely have to find some sense of urgency. I mean, they're reaching the 30-game mark soon, and the trade deadline's coming up. And I think the big thing for the Nats is they need pitching. This week it came out that Strasburg will most likely need season-ending surgery on his nerve damage in his throwing hand. I think that's going to be a big issue for them. Even with the extended playoff format, they still have to get into second place. They're still a game and a half back of the Marlins there. I don't think they're going to be competing with Atlanta. I mean, they played Atlanta this week. They had the 3-game series. They went 1-1 with the third game postponed, but they blew the lead in game one, a three-run lead in the ninth inning. And then Daniel Hudson came in and blew that. But they played better baseball. They competed in all their games. They split the 4 games they've had with Miami towards the second half of the week. Have the 5th game tomorrow. Hopefully they can win that series. But I think the Nats, they're going to have to find pitching. I mean, I know they brought up Will Crow. They brought up a couple other guys, Seth Romero earlier in the week and a couple other guys, but they're going to need pitching if they're going to compete. But I've liked the way the team's played. I mean, they've played good defense. They've hit the ball well. It's good to see a lot of the young guys playing. Luis Garcia had another good week, but I think the Nats pitching is going to be a problem. But Anibal Sanchez, I think I talked about it last week, that if the Nats are going to make a playoff run, if they're going to even make the playoffs, he has to pitch well, and he went 2-0 this week. So I was definitely happy with the way he pitched.
I'd be interested to see if the Nats go for Jackson Rutledge. He was the first round pick back a couple years ago out of Florida. He is a big pitcher. I believe he's up to like 6'10", somewhere up there. He's over 6'4", I know that, and he's got a lot of potential. It'll be interesting to see if they want to spend one of those years on him in this shortened season. Of course, Strasburg out. Scherzer's had some injury problems so far, and it's just the pitching isn't where it's at. And the offense, they can explode, and when they explode, they're really good. They had 9 runs today, and they have another game tomorrow against the Marlins. After that, they have Philly and Boston. So this is their shot. Middle of the season, if they want to make a run, they can do it now. And I'm excited for the game tomorrow. I'll actually be able to see a little bit of it live. I'm going up to the rooftop to eat dinner at one of those restaurants right outside. So I'll be able to get in a bit of view of home plate and first base. So I'll be able to see some baseball. Hopefully the Nats can do good. But, they've got a chance. They've really been 500 so far this season. And if Luis Garcia can play up to his potential, if Victor Robles can keep playing well, I think they've got a good chance to do something good.
Yeah, exactly. And, they restocked the bullpen, and the bullpen's been pretty good. I mean, besides Daniel Hudson blowing the lead in the 9th inning versus the Braves the other day, the bullpen's been pretty good. I mean, Will Harris is back. Sean Doolittle's had injury problems, but if he can come back and get back to his self, which I don't know if he can, but if he can, that'll really help. But the back end's been good. I mean, I've liked the way Tanner Rainey, he's pitched really well this year. I think he's taken a big step forward, and I think that's really big for this club because he has a nasty slider, and when he gets that fastball up into the upper 90s and then throws that slider, that's really hard to hit. So I think if he can keep progressing, that'll be really good. And the offense has been great. I mean, a lot of the young guys have been contributing. Carter Kieboom and Luis Garcia. I mean, Soto's had a great start since coming back from his absence. Josh Harrison started to contribute. So, I mean, they've had a really good year. I mean, Trey Turner's also hit really well recently. Yan Gomes got in on the home run action, but the key is going to be starting pitching. Scherzer, he's been generally pretty good this year. Corbin's been generally pretty good. Sanchez had a better week, but, with Strasburg out, that's going to be tough. I mean, Austin Voth has been, on and off. Same thing with Eric Fetty. They had to call up Will Crow. Jackson Rutledge, I think he was the first-round pick from 2 years ago. I don't know if he's ready yet, but we'll see. But they're at the trade deadline. I definitely anticipate them making some sort of moves. I mean, I've heard Nathan Eovaldi's name been thrown around a couple times, a couple other pitchers, Jake Odorizzi, pitchers like that. But I think they're definitely going to have to trade for a middle-of-the-road third option because you can't win with just 2 pitchers going into the playoffs.
Yeah, they definitely need something. And I'll go back a little bit of what you said. Tanner Rainey, he has impressed me so much so far this season. He has potential to become one of the better relievers in baseball. Like you said, that slider is one of the best sliders in baseball, and he's got a fastball that can reach 100. It's just his control. Last year, he was at about 8 walks per 9 innings. This year, he's down to, I believe, around 2 or 3. Yeah, so his control is his biggest problem, and he's really fixed that. And if he can keep playing as well as he has, pitching as well as he has, he's got potential to be the closer, and I think he should be right now.
Yeah. I mean, he's pitched. I feel more relieved when he's on the mound than Daniel Hudson. I think Daniel Hudson, even when he's closed a game successfully, he still let up a couple runs in the ninth inning, and that's just not going to cut it. I mean, you get into, with the shortened season, the Nats are reaching about 30 games. It's halfway towards the season, and we got to get at least to that second spot in the division. You can't be blowing games versus the division leader in the ninth inning. That just, in a shortened season, you can't be doing that. So, if Daniel Hudson can't get it figured out and Sean Doolittle's still on the IL, I think that Tanner Rainey is a viable option. I mean, he's pitched really well this year. I've been really surprised. He's pitched really well.
Yeah, I think he's more than viable. I think he's really good. He's one of the more underrated relievers in baseball. No one really knows who he is, but if he can be on point, he will easily fan out the side, go 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So after that, now to our last team here, Washington football team. Nothing can go right for us. Everything, of course, we went through the Geist stuff in the past. And first week in pads, things were looking good. Haskins has made some improvements. His accuracy still isn't 100% there, but they're really working on that, getting his feet and hands in sync, and he's really improved in that sense. He's a lot more mobile. But now, Ron Rivera diagnosed with cancer this week. Everything was going right. Now Rivera might not be able to coach this year. He's going to try and fight through. If not, they've got a really good option behind him, Jack Del Rio at defensive coordinator. He's been a head coach in the past. He's an amazing defensive coordinator, and I think if he can slot into head coach just for a couple weeks, they'd be fine. But it really hurts, and Rivera has been huge to this team this year. Also another, point of how Rivera is trying to change the team today. Cut Cody Lattimore. He was involved in an incident earlier in the offseason, and it's that no-nonsense policy that we saw with Geist. Right when the report came out for Geist, he was gone. Lattimore's now gone. But those are two positions where things are a little interesting for Washington football team. Lattimore at wide receiver, they really need good receivers. They have Terry McLaurin, who's got a chance to be the best receiver in the NFC East this year. He'll probably be top 3 in receiving yards if Haskins can, throw well. And then running back where Geist was. Bryce Love is really looking like he's back where he was at Stanford. Of course, at Stanford, he was one of the best running backs, honestly, in college history. He was insane. Ended up hurting his knee his senior year. Washington football team took a gamble pick on him, and it seems like it's paying off. He was out all year last year, but now he's starting to look well. Adrian Peterson, of course, is really good. And then also Antonio Gibson has got a chance to slot in there. He's that little utility knife guy, and I think he's going to have a really good year. But I've said this in the past, it's really a boom or bust year for Washington football team. And if the things are going the way they are so far, the offensive line is struggling a bit, and I think we knew that would happen, especially against the D-line that they're going against now. But if that O-line can be at least just decent, we don't need them to be good, just decent, this team has got a chance to go at least 7-9. But if that O-line is not good, and then Haskins get hurt, then we get into Allen and Smith, I think it can be a really rough year for Washington football team. By the way, I hope they pick a name soon. Saying Washington football team is so much. It's catching up my words. So next, our last team of the night, DC United. They're starting back their season. Of course, MLS had a really weird way to come back from the coronavirus. They had their MLS's back tournament in Orlando, and it was really uncertain if they were going to have a regular season after that. They ended up having one, and they've started back up. That game was over in Cincinnati. It was a draw, 0-0. And it was a really good game for DC United. They had a couple of really close opportunities, and I think they've got a chance to make a playoff run. Without Rooney, it's been interesting. There's not as much, hype around the team, but they really have a lot of talent around that. Of course, Gressel's in there, and DC United's got a chance to have a good season. So that's all I have for tonight. Anyone else have anything to add before we stop?
I have one more thing.
All right, Sean, what do you have?
After tonight's game, Anthony Santander extended his hitting streak to 18 games on the year.
Wow. Yeah, he's really had a good year so far for the O's. And, if he can keep doing that, 18, that's, about a third of the way to Joe DiMaggio's record. He's got a chance this season. That'd basically be getting a hit in every single game for the whole entire season. But you know what? It's a 60-game season. Why not? We'll see what happens. So
yeah, and to note of that is the longest streak in the major. So really good of Sean for pointing that out. And he also has 10 home runs. So, I mean, Santander playing almost half a season last year had 20. You think of what he would actually do on a full season playing the way he's playing. You got to think 50, 60 home runs. I mean, he's just been on an incredible pace. Talking about 28 games into the season, he's got 10. You multiply that by 6 at this point, right, in a regular season, if I'm correct, 6 or 5.
I think we're halfway through the season, so you just multiply it by. Wait, no, that's
if we're doing a regular
game
full
point of the season. That's 82
though.
games. So I think by 8, because we're at. Wait, hold on. We're at like 30 games, and it's.
I got my calculator right here.
Right.
Let's see.
So I think it's 30 divided by 80, then do that times 10, or it's the opposite. I don't know. It's too long since math class.
It's actually almost like 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
So if you multiply 28 times 6.5, you are at 182. So if you multiply that times 10, Santander is on the pace for 65 home runs this year. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of my favorite parts about this season is just this guy's on pace for this many home runs, and I think that's able to make it a little bit fun. You know, just why not embrace the difference?
Right.
So, is that all, everyone?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah,
I think we literally covered everything, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very eventful week here in the Maryland sports area. And for all of us here at Maryland Sports Blog, I've been your host, Adam Gotkin. Thank you all for joining us so much. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, give us some feedback. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back next week.